T-Rex and Spinosaurus are probably two of the most famous predatory dinosaurs ever discovered. And obviously people have been comparing these two for years. Spinosaurus was longer, T-Rex was much more heavily built. But which one was actually bigger? Of course, T-Rex was the bigger one and the stronger one, as we all know. But when you start looking at the estimates, it's actually a little closer than you might expect. Let's start with their length. Spinosaurus was absolutely massive. Modern reconstructions put it at somewhere around 14 meters long, that is similar to 46 feet, which would make it longer than most known T-Rex specimens. Whereas T-Rex was estimated to be somewhere around 12 to 13 meters long. So if you're talking just about length, Spinosaurus takes this pretty comfortably. But in science, when we talk about bigger, we usually talk about weight and body mass. So let's discuss about weight next. And this is where things start to get interesting. T-Rex was an incredibly heavily built dinosaur. It had a massive torso, a huge skull, a bone-crushing bite, and really robust legs. Estimates vary between specimens and between different studies, but adult T-Rex are commonly estimated at roughly 6 to 8 tons or 7 to 8 tons, with some exceptional individuals exceeding 9 tons. Scotty, for example, has been estimated at around 8.9 tons. And for Spinosaurus, a detailed study published in 2022 estimated the animal at around 7.4 tons. In the paper, it was mentioned 7 to 8 tons, but if we talk about a specific figure, 7.4 tons is the accepted figure for now. One thing that's often overlooked in dinosaur size comparisons or even animal comparisons is relative size. Saying one animal was 2 tons heavier sounds like a massive difference, but that number doesn't mean much without considering how large the animals already were. For example, if we compare an 8-ton T-Rex with a 6-ton Spinosaurus, say, that's a 2-ton difference, but relatively, this T-Rex is about 1.33 times the mass or 33% heavier. And this is found when we divide 8 by 6, that is 1.33 is the answer. If we take a 9-ton T-Rex and a 6-ton Spinosaurus, the 3-ton difference sounds huge, but relatively that's 1.5 times the mass or 50% heavier. It is a significant advantage, but T-Rex would not be double the size of Spinosaurus if we consider these estimates. And with closer estimates, the difference becomes tiny. An 8-ton T-Rex compared with a 7.4-ton Spinosaurus is only about 8% heavier, and that ratio will get a little larger if we compare Sioux with Spinosaurus, where Sioux weighed 8.9 tons, and if we consider the recent estimates for Spinosaurus, that is 7.4 tons, then the ratio gets a little larger as compared to 8-ton T-Rex versus 7.4 Spinosaurus. So the difference isn't huge when we are talking about weights and sizes. Now let's talk about the height. Height is a little tricky because sources measure different things: hip height, head height, or for Spino, the top of the sail. But let's give you some estimates. A 2026 Royal Society Open Science study modeling T-Rex gives plausible standing hip heights of about 2.5 to 3.15 meters. That is 8.2 to 10.3 feet at the hips. And if we talk about Spinosaurus, it isn't usually given a number, but its sail is estimated to be 5 to 6 feet long by itself. So if Spino was, say, 8 feet tall, then the sail would give it an additional 5 to 6 height, making it 13 to 14 feet tall. But there are no verified estimates of dinosaur heights, so these are completely speculative numbers. Now, previously I mentioned about relative size difference and how it plays an important role in determining who is heavier and how much heavier is he compared to the opponent. Lion versus tiger is a great analogy. For example, using rough adult male figures, lion weighs around 190 kilograms and a Bengal tiger weighs around 220 kilograms. If we divide both of them, we get 1.16 as the result. So it means that the tiger is roughly 16% heavier in that example, or 1.16 times heavier, which is not a massive difference. Same is the case for T-Rex and Spinosaurus, as I've already calculated their relative size differences previously. So if we consider weight as a deciding factor in a fight, there won't be a huge difference between Spino and T-Rex, and both are in relatively similar weight classes. Now let's discuss about weaponry. This is where it falls apart for Spino, since T-Rex had an extremely powerful bite with large, thick teeth designed to withstand huge forces. Unlike the comparatively slender teeth of Spinosaurus, Rex's teeth were robust and capable of deeply puncturing and crushing bone. A 2017 peer-reviewed study estimated maximum posterior bite force in adult T-Rex at up to 34,522 newtons. Other biomechanical modeling has produced higher estimates. A later analysis discusses estimates of roughly 29,510 to 53,735 newtons. So there is genuine uncertainty between models. And a study in 2012 gives it a range of 35,000 to 57,000 newtons, which is a huge bite force. Spinosaurus, on the other hand, had a very different skull, long and narrow with conical teeth. It wasn't built like Rex's bone-crushing skull. Its teeth were mainly designed for gripping slippery prey like fish, since Spino preyed upon fish, and its teeth lack serration, so it can get a good grip on the prey. For Spinosaurus, a 2022 PRJ study estimated front of the jaw had a force of 4,829 newtons, back of jaw had a force of 11,936 newtons, which is impressive but significantly less than T-Rex. And it's important to mention that Spinosaurus estimate is more tentative because some skull dimensions had to be reconstructed or scaled, whereas bite forces for T-Rex were a lot more accurate because of its complete fossils. Now let's talk about the claws. T-Rex claws were tiny compared to its body size, and in a fight were basically almost useless unless it got really close to an opponent. Spinosaurus, on the other hand, had huge claws and huge arms, and those claws were capable of inflicting some serious damage in a fight, even though it is debated whether those claws were used for fighting or not, and their main purpose probably related to hunting, but those claws could inflict some serious damage if a fight did happen. So after comparing their size and weaponry, which dinosaur actually comes out on top? In terms of length, Spinosaurus was the larger animal, reaching around 14 meters or 46 feet, while T-Rex was generally shorter but much more heavily built. Their weight comparison is less straightforward. Depending on which estimate you use, T-Rex could be significantly heavier, only slightly heavier, or their masses could overlap. When it comes to weaponry, T-Rex had the major advantage in its skull, an extremely powerful bite, while Spinosaurus had much larger and more useful forelimbs equipped with large claws. So if you're asking who would win in a fight, T-Rex would be heavily favored, mainly because of its much more robust build and devastating bite. T-Rexes were designed like tanks and were able to withstand bites and impacts from even other T-Rexes, as indicated by fossil bite marks. Spinosaurus is sometimes portrayed as a weak or poorly built predator, especially when compared with T-Rex. But I don't think weak is really the right description. It was still a multi-ton predatory dinosaur with powerful forelimbs and large claws. It was simply adapted very differently from T-Rex, even though it did have a long, narrow snout, and of course it wasn't able to withstand the huge, enormous forces multi-ton theropod dinosaurs were able to exert during fights, but it was by no means a weak dinosaur and could still inflict some serious damage and injury, and potentially even kill a theropod dinosaur if it struck the right area. There isn't an accurate percentage that we can give to T-Rex that it wins around 70 or 80% of the times, but it would win the majority of the fights. We can say around 80% or 85% of the fights.